Desires drive and define us. When it's all said and done and our journey is over, they will have forged the path that we have taken. But if René Girard is correct and desires are mimetic in nature, how do we live an authentic life? Hi, my name is Brian Apavu. I am a neurologist with an interest in philosophy of the mind and living the examined life. And today I want to talk about desires and complete the video series that I've made on the concept of the mimetic theory of desire. For those who haven't seen my prior videos, or just to give you a little bit of a recap, René Girard, a famous historian and analyst, had described the concept of the mimetic theory of desire, and that is that the desires that we have fundamentally are absorbed from the environment around us and the people and models that exist within and around us. Mimetic desire is something that is like gravity. It is intrinsic and just a part of our lives. Once we understand this about desires, we are able to make the next steps in shaping them and maturing them. A lot of people describe themselves as having a self-narrative with some sort of a pinnacle moment that they found themselves or found their purpose or what they were meant to do on this earth. But we often find that this is really just a romantic lie. If you look at the books and literature that have been put out over the last 30 years or so, or actually over the last 100 years, and you really see that within the last 30 years, that the concept of finding your purpose or finding meaning in your life is something that is really a new phenomena. When we tell ourselves the romantic lie of the idea that we found ourselves, or there was some pinnacle moment where we found what we were meant to do on this earth, we deceive ourselves. When we reject the truth of what drives us, we're denying the consequences of what our desires have for other people. And likewise, we deny the consequences of how the desires of other people end up shaping us. So how do we address this concept of mimetic desires, and how do we work toward living a life that is authentic and gives us a great degree of meaning? One technique is to really just understand your models. For me, I can't deny that my journey and my path has been forged by the concept of mimesis. I went to school, I wanted to get good grades, my parents praised me and others around me praised me when I did better in school. Becoming a physician has always been something that the people around me have always looked at as something to be admirable, and I can't deny that that is part of the influence of where I took a path to become a physician. So I can't deny these things. It would be wrong for me to say that I just came up with this within a single time, or I had a moment where I decided to become a physician. There are a lot of things around my environment that forged me in the path that I did. I think right now, where I stand in my life, I want to be able to acknowledge these concepts and these models around me that formed what decisions I made, so that I'm able to make really authentic decisions moving forward about what I do with my life. And so, what tactics can we do to live a more authentic life? This is something that's really been meaningful for me at this point in my life, because I'm making some changes in terms of my career and the things that I want to do step by step. And the concept of mimetic desires is really important to me, and recognizing the way I've been and trying to figure out where I want to go. I do want to be a more authentic individual and have a life that's really meaningful. And for my children, I want them to be able to make steps in their life that are truly authentic and let them live life with as much reward as possible. But how can we do this? I've looked at a variety of books and tools, and I've listened to a variety of people. This is something that I've just become really passionate about. And so, out of materials that I've absorbed, I want to sort of give you perhaps the pearl that I've absorbed and give you references. I'll put in the references below. I'll put in the show notes below some references to some great books that really helped me. So the first thing you want to do is you want to be able to name your models, sort of be explicit. And this is a process in which we sort of try to identify who we are and what we've really used in our lives as models. So the most obvious way to do this is to just write it out. Just write out maps for yourself about what the models could be. I mean, Rene Girard and others have great diagrams that we've shown before that talk about this kind of concept of models and ourselves and how they mediate what desire we have, so we can just map out, who and what are the influences that we've had in our lives. So we obviously have our parents or the people who raised us. We have individuals who we recognize as role models, so mentors that we've had, teachers that we've had, people that we really look up to and we've looked at as sort of models for who we want to be in the future. There are also individuals who we may have never met, but we see online or we see in television, and we see something about them, or at least the way they're represented to us, that becomes something we want to emulate. And you can't deny that there are characters as well. You think about superheroes and other people that children really admire. These aren't actual characters. These aren't actual people in the world, and they may not even have realistic characteristics to them, but they, at least when we were children, sort of inspired us, and we really looked up to these individuals. And that's really important to acknowledge, because they played a role in how we create the symbolic representation of what we aspire to. So taking some time and just sort of mapping these out and thinking about it over the course of your life and can actually be a really helpful process. While it's important to think about the models that we aspire to, the individuals we aspire to, we also want to know those that are around us in the past or present that are unhealthy. Jim Rohn is famous for saying that you become the average of the 5 people you are closest with, and this is absolutely a valid sort of way to think about yourself and the people around you. There are many of us have individuals that we currently have in our life or have had in our life who really have a drain on us. They may bring a negative energy that we really dislike. They may put ideas down. They may judge harshly. They may identify problems that happen and make light of them without offering solutions. They may just shame you or make fun of individuals around them. And this can really be toxic if we're trying to build lives that really are ones where we have meaning, where we provide value. And we need to be able to recognize who these people are and make sure that we take some form of steps to get away from them. And that can be either physically, people who are actually around you in your day-to-day life, or people who just have a pull on you. And we need to find ways of being able to get ourselves away from that psychological pull that they have. So it's important to identify those models of healthy behavior that we aspire to. We want to be able to recognize unhealthy behavior and be able to pull ourselves away from their influence. Another important factor is how we think about innovation. Innovation and creativity are what truly make us human in a world of increasing artificial intelligence and technology that's bringing in a ton of productivity and efficiency. Our work is being challenged, and how we create value in the world and create and become valuable is much more challenging than ever before. Yet, what makes us fully human, at least, and is what artificial intelligence, at least currently present, is not able to do, is our ability to create and add value, our ability to create and innovate. And so what is at the heart of innovation? We think of innovation as something of brilliance and something that is original and is creative. How do we really generate this? There is a really excellent book by Matt Ridley titled How Innovation Works and Why It Flourishes in Freedom, where he describes that innovation is fundamentally recombinant, where we take the integration of different ideas and pull them together. In his words, to paraphrase, innovation happens when ideas have sex, when you take ideas that come from others and you bring them into new domains where they haven't been before, and you identify problems in very specific domains, and you are able to use the creativity that was used elsewhere to create something new and brilliant. So this really is how a lot of innovation happens, where it's an assimilation of ideas, where ideas are embraced from past and other disciplines and put into new places. And the more that we can do this and accept this and recognize it and try to find sort of solutions to new problems that haven't been done before, the more that we can be creative and create more value for others in our lives. Another tactic that was described by Luke Burgess is the idea of creating positive flywheel effects of desire. When we take an action and it leads to the consequences where we will take other actions and we go down a net effect. I make the decision to become a physician, and that leads to me choosing a specialty, that leads to me going to residency and choosing a city to live in, and then that leads to me meeting my wife, and then our decision to have children, and what job I take, and what sort of patients I take care of, and what sort of expertise I bring. And that all ends up having this net effect overall in your life. Each decision leads to other major decisions and the formulation of other desires. So this is something we have to sort of recognize. And there are two types of cycles that are the flywheel effects. There are positive cycles and negative cycles of desire. Negative cycles are ones where we think that a resource that we desire is one that others will want as well, but then that only one of us can get it. And this comes from a mindset of scarcity, anger, and resentment. And when we focus on these, they can have a very negative effect. And some of this can be in the process of unhealthy competition, where somebody wants to win something and then others, and only one person is going to get it and the rest are going to have resentment, and then they're going to take action against those who have acquired resources. So these are the type of things that we want to avoid, because they really can have a negative consequences in their effect in our lives when we compete in this manner. But there's other forms of healthy competition and healthy collaboration where we have a positive flywheel effect of desire, where resources are not necessarily limited and we can create abundance and offer value in ways that have not been observed before. And this is where innovation really takes an account. And so when we have that sort of opportunity where others can get resources from our new innovation and we can work together with others and a collaborative nature, then we are able to have a great effect on the world around us, and others can be inspired by the value that we create for others. Another important tactic is to establish your values and orient yourselves toward them. In much of Jordan Peterson's books and in the lectures that he have, I think of the book 12 Rules for Life, as well as his lecture series online, as well as his book Maps of Meaning. He looks at various stories, and one of the stories that he often refers back to is the story of Pinocchio. So Pinocchio, as we know, is a puppet, and that is not just part of the structure of the story, but it's also a very good metaphor for an individual. He originally has no real identity. He is created by his creator, or his father, Geppetto, when he wished upon a star for Pinocchio to be something greater, a real boy, something authentic. And at first, Pinocchio doesn't really have a clear identity. He is given a conscious in the form of in the form of Jiminy Cricket, and he goes through the process of trying to find himself. And in that process, he comes across other characters, a cat and a fox, that show that he is prone to manipulation and falsification, and they ultimately lead him to Pleasure Island. And he makes he makes bad decisions along the way early in his life. He makes decisions that he regrets and has to pull himself away from. These individuals flatter him, tempt him, and lure him off the path to becoming a real boy. And these are situations where Pinocchio isn't following necessarily what Jiminy Cricket wants him to sort of follow toward where he wants to go to. But ultimately, he tries to orient himself. These individuals are shown to seduce him through expedience and lies, abandoning the pursuit of truth and meaning. Ultimately, Pinocchio must go to the bottom of the ocean to find his father Geppetto. This represents the confronting of the depths and chaos and the unconscious to reunite with wisdom and tradition. It is only when he rescues his father that he confronts chaos, tells the truth, and acts with moral integrity. And it's only then that he becomes a real boy. In this manner, Jordan Peterson advises young people to find that northern star, find that symbolic representation of a higher good that you can aspire to. Orient yourself to it, bring yourself to it. And you may stumble along the way in your process of orienting toward your highest value, but as long as you set yourself in that direction, you become a better version of yourself every day. In Anne-Laure Lecomte's book, Tiny Experiments, How to Live Freely in a Goal-Obsessed World, she tackles an acronym that many of us have heard in our work if we work for a large organization or corporation. That acronym is being SMART, which stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. SMART was developed in the psychology space, but it has been completely embraced in corporate culture. We see it all around us if we work for large organizations, because it is a fundamental process of efficiency and productivity. It allows employees to, when they are given a task, to be able to make the most out of it toward a specific outcome. Large organizations have, and large corporations have, specific financial goals and metrics that they wish to obtain as an overall organization. And what they fundamentally want is for employees to contribute toward that overarching goal. And so having the employees with specific tasks and with an identification of how to accomplish them with the SMART method allows them to coalesce these resources in a way that they can be overall very productive and efficient. And while this does lead to productivity and efficiency, a meaningful life is not necessarily inherently productive. Fundamentally, none of us really want to be productive. What we want is authenticity. We want to express ourselves, connect with others, and create value and be here on this earth in those capacities. Creating value through expression and connection with others, helping solve problems in front of us, that is a part of an authentic life. Productivity can be helpful to those means, but not at the expense of living with authenticity. Lecomte proposes the concept of PACT, which stands for purposeful, actionable, continuous, and trackable, as a way to take tiny experiments and see where they lead. Make some decisions about things that you can do, that you want to do, that may lead you to a more authentic life, and be able to assess them, track them, and really understand whether they are taking you where you want to go. Not necessarily having an end game in sight, but leading yourself step by step in a manner that's authentic. When it comes to authentic teams, authentic relationships, authentic groups of individuals, the truth is absolutely everything. In any sort of team or organization, there is a problem to solve and a reality to what challenges exist toward coming up with a solution. In healthy teams, the truth moves fast. When a challenge arises and a situation needs to be evaluated for what it is, the individuals on the team, particularly the leaders on the team, want to diffuse the critical information and the truth and reality to team members as quickly as possible so that all issues can be addressed. proposals for solutions and different scenarios can play out within team members. And ideally, in a healthy team, there is an ability to look at each of these scenarios, to recognize what sort of proposals have what advantages and disadvantages, and to be able to come to a consensus about how to solve the problem in a way that really addresses the issues at play. However, we know we have not always been part of healthy teams. We know that there are issues like egos, flattery, aggressive behavior, bullying, and conflict avoidance that can lead to an inability to bring all critical information to the table. Many of us have been in situations where we understand that a problem arises and we bring the truth of that problem to a leader, but there are situations where that leader does not diffuse the critical information to the people who need to know about it in order to solve the problem. And when that happens, there is inauthenticity. There is a barrier to the disbursement of truth. And ultimately, these are the situations where teams fail and blame begins to come around. The truth may not always be easy to accept, but the faster that it gets around a team and to the right people, the better the team will work in finding authentic solutions to problems around them. Another important piece to living an authentic life is to embrace imperfection. We live in a world where we celebrate success. It happens in the corporate world, it happens in academia. This is part of our schooling system where we recognize and reward straight A's, but what we don't really recognize and appreciate is progress and steps to getting better. Part of that process of steps to getting better is to recognize failure and to be able to accept failure as a way of identifying how you can get better. We praise individuals who we perceive or we portray as having had limited failure. This is the celebration of straight A students or a valedictorian or other individuals with great achievement with minimal mistakes. This is something we embrace early on, and even in the corporate world, we embrace the productivity of successful people without showing necessarily the failures that they help them learn in the process. And from that, we have a world which is really has issues. We have a world where for people to climb up corporate ladders or get to certain positions, at some point or another, they are told to fake it until you make it. You may have been getting this advice at some point in your life. You probably know individuals who have embraced that and achieved success, and you may have achieved some of that success yourself by using the fake it till you make it approach. While it can be a useful tactic for specific outcomes that you want to achieve, it fundamentally flies in the face of authenticity. It is really authenticity that is what the world really needs. The world doesn't need people to fake it till they make it. They need people to embrace what they know and what they don't know, and to show progress in terms of getting better at what they need help with. Or this is how progress is made, this is how achievement occurs, and this is how solutions are solved. A world without evolution would lack imperfection, and to live an examined life requires you to embrace those imperfections. You want to choose growth loops with iteration where you take trial and error and you continuously grow from those loops. In Japanese culture, Conf describes in her book Tiny Experiments the idea and the Japanese art of kintsugi. Here, broken pottery is repaired with gold and embraced as a part of art form. In the creation of such pottery, the imperfections of the art are embraced, cultivating an endorsement for self-compassion. Kintsugi illustrates how our flaws and past mistakes can ultimately become sources of strength and energy and beauty when acknowledged and integrated rather than hidden. Aligned within this art is the idea that rather than chasing perfection, we should embrace and celebrate the process of learning and evolving. Growth requires repair, not in spite of our fractures, but because of them. In his book, Wanting, The Power of Mimetic Desire in Everyday Life, the author Luke Burgess has a line that really resonated with me as I read it and even to this day, and that is that desires are discerned, not decided, and that desires exist in the liminal space between what's now and what is next. This idea comes at the fact that we don't need to decide our desires. We need to look from within and understand what they are. Anne-Laurie LeConte describes in her book Tiny Experiments to try and examine our desires from the standpoint of an anthropologist, looking at your own life as a topic of study. Anthropology requires the open-mindedness which one must look inside, recording astonishment and wonder, and that which one would not have otherwise been able to guess if not having studied it in such a manner. For me, this involves a number of different processes that I do for myself. One of the things that I really like to do is spend a little bit of time in solitude every day. I am a busy physician with a practice, and I have a wife and 3 children, a 4th on the way. So my life is quite busy. However, I try to make time every day. I have introspection and time alone in a room, and I spend a lot of time journaling and writing and thinking of and utilizing prompts that I get from various resources to be able to gather and garner my thoughts and understand my desires in the process, be able to write freely and not take any shame in a process of journaling. Another technique that actually I found really helpful is to record my dreams. On my best days, what I try to do in the morning after I wake up is to really think about what dreams I had overnight. And if you do this, you can find some pretty illustrious dreams and pretty really colorful dreams that you might be having, and just to write them out. And it's really fascinating process because some of the dreams that you have can represent events that happened earlier in your life, or things that just have a very strong metaphor to the things that are compelling you and really motivating you with fear, anger, inspiration in the current moment. And this can be really helpful for understanding what desires you have. Of course, those being mimetic in nature, because mimesis is just like gravity. So these tactics can be really helpful. They shine the subconscious into the conscious. It brings this out. It brings out, as Carl Jung has, it brings out the shadow into the present, and you're able to think about these things in your own life and be able to then really help self-examine yourself like an anthropologist, as LeConte describes, and try to understand how the desires you have are affecting you, both in whether you're in positive or negative flywheel effects of desires, and be able to then take those tiny experiments where you can try to move yourself in a direction where you find more authenticity and meaning in your life. While solitude is really helpful, it also is important to recognize the value of power of social flow in your life. It is important to recognize others who have walked a path different from you. I'm at a point in my life where I have spent a lot of time over the last 15 to 20 years in the medical world, around physicians who've trained in a specific manner. I think where I work and where other people work in traditional hospitals, you're put into teams and organizations where a lot of the people that you directly work with and change shifts with and partner with are people who are really trained very similarly to you, and as such you have very similar goals. And when that ends up being your team, you end up having kind of the same goals. And when you have the same goals, if you are in an environment where resources are scarce, you have a scarcity mindset. And that's where that negative flywheel effect of desire can be. So only one individual can be the top producer for a department. Only one individual can have the highest rated reviews of the department. Only one person can have the most grants or the most papers or things like that. This is sort of that negative flywheel effect of desire, where when you have people within the same expertise with the same goals, you have that negative flywheel effect of desire. But when we create our teams and our environments with people around us who aren't necessarily doing the same thing we are, and come from different backgrounds, that's where we get a real unique opportunity for social flow when we're on teams, or not even just teams, just communities where we help each other out. And not all of us have the same expertise, but we lean on each other, for different things. We learn from each other, and then we learn tactics that each other have that where we can come up with unique solutions. So for me, I think I kind of have had I've tried to been spending a lot more time with individuals outside of traditional medicine, and individuals just in other jobs and other professions, and other businesses that just are working on things that are different, and just learning from them and learning from other people. Academically, one of the things that I found most useful is being involved in research, working with engineers and statisticians and programmers, and learning for how they solve solutions, and thinking about my own problems and how I can use the tactic that they have to learn those. One of the things that I found incredibly useful recently, and in terms of unlocking my own creativity, is working with my personal trainer. I originally worked with a personal trainer to improve my own fitness, but I learned so much about from my personal trainer, was just really excellent about the client relationship, the advisor-client relationship, that how to create a really good relationship, how to embrace failure and imperfections and help an individual along the way, and how to use technology to really help a client. And learned a ton of things that I think can be applied to my own practice with my own patients that I wouldn't have gotten before if I just looked at what I was doing as a physician and looked at what the people around me in my specific department or specific training programs have done. So gathering people from outside disciplines can be extremely helpful and a really useful technique. I think it's really helpful for people to find advisors and mentors outside of their work world, so that they really can learn things and embrace things that they wouldn't get otherwise. Most of us want to have a life of meaning. Too often, we search for meaning from professional authorities, from seeking seniority in academia or corporations, from promotions, from academic achievements or material possessions. And we look for it in the accolades and status that follow from these sorts of achievements. What we find for individuals who have success in those domains, or when we have that sort of success, is that it never really feels enough. It keeps us on a hedonic treadmill where we're always on a journey and a quest for the one accomplishment or the one thing that will finally give us that sense of legacy that we've always wanted. And there is a problem with the concept of legacy. It's an extreme endgame that we think about in terms of trying to define what our value is in this world. The desire for legacy is the desire for evidence that your life, in the end, has meaning. Legacy is the most extreme kind of endgame to set your sights on, since it happens after you are gone. Because legacy keeps a scorecard of your success, worrying about it leads you to prioritize other standards rather than your own. It also steers us to view impact in our life in terms of a scale. It's not necessarily what you built, but how big you built it. In Tiny Experiments, Lecomte puts forth the idea that instead of focusing on the path of legacy, to be successful at any age, on any path, and on your own terms, you may want to focus on generativity. Generativity was first put forth by a psychologist in the 1950s, Erik Erikson, who defined it as the ability to transcend personal interest to provide care and concern for younger and older generations. It is the psychological principle that emphasizes your personal growth to impact the world that is around you. Instead of focusing on what you leave behind, generativity is about what you give in the here and now, actively contributing to your community, to your family, to those around you, creating opportunities for others to grow, and to share your experiences in a manner that provides collective growth to the people around you. Generativity is not measured by scale. It is measured by the depth of connection that you have with the community and the people that are around you. It is built around the conversations you have and the positive impact of the work that you produce, and ultimately the lives that you touch. Unlike legacy, which focuses on leaving an enduring, outsized mark, generativity is found in the immediate everyday interactions we have with the people around us. Stephen Covey is famous for his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in it, in Habit 2, he describes the idea of trying to begin with the end in mind and imagining yourself and your eulogy after you die and thinking about the individuals around you, your family, your community members, the people you've influenced, and what they would say about you. And the purpose of this is to be able to think about how to craft your life and live your life in a manner where you think about what you want others to say about you. Stephen Covey's book is an excellent book. I highly advise everyone to read it. But at the same time, this book is about being productive and effective. While that is very important, it's not necessarily in line with the concept of authenticity and meaning. If we truly want to embrace authenticity and meaning, we need to find it in our daily actions rather than the content of a future eulogy. When generativity becomes your focus, the immediate impact of your actions is all the motivation you need to take steps forward. Every pact you make, every shift that you do in your life, every decision that you take and adjust from is a step towards creating better connection, expressing yourself in a way that you want, and creating the value that you want to have for the others in the community around you. For me, now that I am a father, I have a lot of thoughts about the action that I take on a daily basis. I'm put into situations constantly where I have to make decisions that are hard. I have to make decisions where there is clear short-term advantage if I decide to be inauthentic. But ultimately, I know that the life that I'm living is something that my kids watch. They watch the decisions that they make. They're less than 5 years old. They're all 5 years or younger right now. But still, they're watching who I am. They're watching the decisions they make. They're watching, what influences me, whether it's my character and my authentic self, or it is the mimetic influences of other individuals with others' interests. And this is really, really something that in my life right now that really drives me to just do this right, because they're watching me and I want them in their life to live lives of authenticity. And so that is where this concept of not necessarily looking at the end in mind and what that outcome is going to be, but living that life of character and living that life of authenticity and deep connection and making the decisions that just are right in terms of having growth within my immediate family, community, and so forth, and creating values for others. That is really something that I want my kids to see out of me. So as they make the decisions in their life, it's a part of who they become as well. Because this world doesn't need people necessarily who are all extremely productive. Our corporations and organizations and institutions all want us to be productive because they have their own particular goals and set outcomes that they want. And those are fine, but those aren't ours. Like, we are fundamentally doing what we do in life to create value, connection, and express others. So living a more authentic life seems much more in line with who we want to be. So and that's where all of these tactics, I think, are very helpful. So, the books I mentioned, Anne Lorraine Lacan's Tiny Experiments, Luke Burgess, How to Live Freely, Luke Burgess, Wanting the Power of Mimetic Desire in Everyday Life. Those are two fantastic books. Anything by Rene Girard focuses on the mimetic theory of desire. It is very academic in nature, but helpful, and I described some of those books in my first video of Mimetic Desire. Jordan Peterson's work, 12 Rules for Life, he talks a lot about Rene Girard and a lot of his materials and courses, and it's particularly early stuff that you can find online, as well as his early books. So I think that's all very helpful. And then other things that, the other competing ideas as well. Like I mentioned, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, great book, a little different, not necessarily focused more on the eulogy aspect of things, but also it's something worth reading. So I hope these were all really useful for you. I hope you found some insight, and I hope by sharing a little bit about myself and where I'm at, that can be helpful as well. If you like these videos, please hit the like button and subscribe. And if you have any comments about things that you think or other ideas you think should be tackled on this channel, please put it in the comments below. I really appreciate it. And I thank you for your time and hope to talk to you again soon.